The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the wide glass panels of the bank, throwing long golden reflections on the polished marble floor. Customers shuffled forward in the seemingly endless queue, some sighing impatiently, others glued to their phones to pass the time. The sharp clicking of keyboards, the rustle of paperwork, and the occasional ringing of a service bell created a busy yet impersonal atmosphere. At the center of it all, a young manager leaned lazily against the counter, his tailored navy suit pristine, his slicked back hair immaculate, and his polished shoes shining under the artificial lights. His tie had been loosened just enough to make him look relaxed, as though he wanted everyone to know he was in control, untouchable. The man next in line stepped forward with quiet composure. He looked ordinary, plain beige shirt neatly tucked into simple trousers, shoes worn but cared for, his face calm and unremarkable to anyone who didn't look closely. He held his card and account slip in steady hands and placed them carefully on the counter before the manager. His voice was low, measured, carrying no trace of impatience or irritation. "I'd like to check my balance, please." The manager glanced at the man, then at the slip, and immediately dismissed him in his mind as just another middle-class customer. He let out a short laugh, not bothering to hide his amusement. "You do know there's a charge for checking balances at the counter, right?" His words carried a hint of mockery, sharp enough for those in the queue to catch. The man nodded with the faintest smile. "That's fine, I'll pay you double if you show me the balance." The words, spoken so calmly, made the manager raise an eyebrow. He looked around at his colleagues, a sly grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Double," he repeated, as though he had just been told the funniest joke of the day. He leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the performance. "Sir, are you sure you want to do that? With the kind of accounts I usually see, paying double for a balance inquiry might leave you with, well, nothing." He chuckled loudly, letting his voice carry across the room. A couple of junior tellers overheard and stifled nervous laughs, unsure whether they should join in. Some customers shifted uncomfortably in line, sensing the arrogance in the young manager's tone. A woman with a child frowned disapprovingly, whispering something to the man behind her. The air grew tense, but the manager basked in it, mistaking it for admiration. The man on the other side of the counter didn't flinch. He didn't protest or show anger. His eyes, calm and steady, rested on the manager with quiet patience. He stood tall, his posture neither defensive nor submissive, but almost regal in its composure. Every second he remained silent seemed to make the laughter echo louder, like a mirror reflecting the manager's arrogance back at him. "Don't worry," the man finally said, his voice soft but with an unmistakable weight that commanded attention. "I'm quite certain I can afford it. Go ahead, show me the balance." The manager smirked, twirling his pen between his fingers as though the request were beneath him. "If you insist," he said, stretching the words out, still trying to entertain his invisible audience. "But don't say I didn't warn you." He tapped the keyboard lazily, not even looking at the man as he did so. From the queue, the murmurs grew. A man whispered, "Why's he mocking him like that?" Another muttered, "Not professional at all." But the manager didn't hear, or perhaps he didn't care. He was too busy reveling in his own superiority, convinced he was putting the customer in his place. The plain-looking man tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. "You might want to look twice before laughing," he said calmly, almost as if he knew something the manager didn't. His words, spoken with such certainty, sliced through the air like a quiet warning. For the first time, the manager's smirk faltered, just for a fraction of a second. He quickly masked it with another forced laugh, shaking his head as though the man's confidence amused him even more. "We'll see, sir, we'll see." The atmosphere in the bank shifted. The customers, the tellers, even the security guard near the entrance began to watch more closely, drawn in by the quiet tension between arrogance and composure. It was no longer just a balance inquiry. It was something heavier, something that hinted at a storm waiting to break. The manager's fingers danced across the keyboard, still wearing that smug grin, but it faltered the moment the numbers flashed on the screen. His laughter caught in his throat. The cursor blinked against a figure so enormous it almost didn't make sense at first glance. He rubbed his eyes quickly, thinking maybe he had typed something wrong, but when he checked again, the digits remained unchanged, towering, overwhelming, a fortune that could buy the very building he worked in 10 times over. His hand twitched as he tried to cover the screen slightly, afraid the nearby tellers or the curious customers might catch sight of the unimaginable balance. The room seemed suddenly too bright, every sound amplified, the clicking of keyboards, the buzz of conversation in the queue, the creak of a chair somewhere. Yet for him, all of it faded into the pounding of his own heart. He forced a dry laugh, pretending nothing was wrong. "Ah, yes, your balance," he said, though his voice cracked midway. His colleagues glanced at him curiously, noticing the sudden shift in his tone. The man standing across from him, still perfectly calm, tilted his head slightly. His composure was unnerving, as if he had seen this reaction countless times before. The manager checked again, hoping desperately for some mistake, some glitch in the system. But the number refused to change. His fingers grew clammy on the keyboard. The grin he had worn so confidently moments ago had vanished, replaced by tight lips and darting eyes. He finally slid the slip across the counter, his hand trembling so much that the paper almost fluttered onto the floor. The man picked it up casually, gave it a brief glance, then folded it neatly and slipped it into his pocket. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice quiet but commanding enough that it filled the space between them. The manager swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "And no, sir. There's no problem. It's just, your balance is extraordinary." His words were barely above a whisper, as though saying them too loudly might summon further humiliation. By now, the customers in line sensed something unusual. They leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. The atmosphere in the bank, moments ago filled with idle impatience, now buzzed with curiosity. A hush fell gradually as people realized the arrogant young manager was no longer laughing, he was shaking. The man across the counter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calmness alone was enough to silence the room. "I told you," he said, almost gently, "you might want to look twice before laughing." The words stung the manager more than if he had been shouted at. His knees felt weak, his palms slick with sweat. He tried to force out some excuse, but nothing came. The quiet dignity of the man standing before him pressed heavier than any reprimand could have. After a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly, the man added, "I suppose I should introduce myself." He straightened slightly, his voice carrying just enough for the nearby tellers and customers to hear. "I am the chief executive officer of this bank." The manager's face drained of color. His heart plummeted into his stomach. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He hadn't just mocked a wealthy client. He had mocked the very man who owned the institution, the one whose signature was likely on his employment papers, the man who could erase his career with a single decision. Gasps rippled through the room. Some customers covered their mouths in shock, others stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The tellers froze at their desks, their hands suspended mid-task, while the security guard stiffened near the door, his eyes darting between the two men. The CEO turned slightly, his voice calm but cutting through the silence like steel. "You see, respect costs nothing. But arrogance," he let the words hang in the air for a long moment, each syllable sinking into the hearts of everyone listening. Then he finished softly, "Arrogance can bankrupt a man's dignity." He stepped away from the counter, his shoes clicking crisply against the marble floor. The bank seemed to hold its breath as he walked toward the exit, every eye following him. No one spoke, no one moved, until the glass doors closed behind him and his figure disappeared into the daylight outside. Only then did the tension release. The manager stood frozen, pale and sweating, his earlier laughter echoing in his mind like a cruel taunt. He felt small, exposed, and utterly powerless. Customers began murmuring again, some shaking their heads, others smirking at the irony of the downfall they had just witnessed. The bank, once a stage for his arrogance, had turned into a courtroom of silent judgment. And the verdict was clear: the man who mocked another for his balance had been shown the true measure of his own. Would you like me to now craft image prompts for both scenes, capturing the tension and contrast between arrogance and revelation?